As we start the second half of this list, keep in mind that the following games are quite personal to me, and as such, I'll probably end up going into them with a little more depth. That said, let's begin with my 10th favorite video game of all time.
Nintendo.
Most people would argue that if this game is your favorite in the series, you're simply blinded by nostalgia. I, for one, do not see it that way. The original Animal Crossing is not my favorite because it's first, nor because I simply grew up with it. It continues to be my favorite because of atmosphere and simplicity. For me, the original conveyed a mood, especially in the evening hours, that no other Animal Crossing has quite been able to replicate. This was the perfect game for playing well into the late hours of the night, with all the lights off, simply wasting away your time. The soundtrack was more subtle, and for that, less invasive. On top of that, the game didn't try to shove too much information into your face. Sure, it was a life simulation kind of game, but it had its points, and didn't go too far beyond that. 40 different kinds of fish? Yeah, I can do that. And I don't feel the need to yank my hair out over it. And on top of that, all the other little things that keep the game's charm. I even feel that age is what has helped it. It's still exactly what it was when it was first advertised. The train station, the wishing well, the Game Boy Advance Island feature. These small details make this so much more special to me. Even the slightly dulled color palette of the game. It's just magic. I love Animal Crossing, and you should too. Probably. I was 5 years old. I rented a Nintendo 64 and a copy of Star Fox. I went into my room and played it for 7 hours. I beat every level, and it was freaking awesome. There is probably no game, and may never be again, one as charming and memorable as Star Fox 64. Every line from the characters is quotable. Every planet sticks out like a beautiful diamond-plated sore thumb. Every boss is unforgettable. This game is just perfect. It's a simple rail shooter, but what more can be said about that? Yeah, there are certain unique features such as the barrel roll mechanic, the targeting system, the occasional all-range mode, and the like, but those add to it. Of course, it's a fantastic game, emphasis on game. It does everything right that a game in the purest sense of the word should. It's fun, challenging, constantly flowing, and full of appeal. What more could anyone want? Now we're getting serious. 2013 was an amazing year for games, and at the top of the class was the masterpiece from Naughty Dog. I love this game. The gameplay and story are so captivating I can barely put it into words. From the first second to the last, I was on the edge of my seat. I was so wrapped up in the lives of Ellie and Joel that in the 2 days I played it, I had no time for my own. I laughed, got scared, and cried, or at least got very sad with them. And I walked away from the ending with a lot more questions than answers. Questions I'm still contemplating to this day. Though I will admit, certain aspects surrounding the game have put a sour taste in my mouth, it doesn't completely detract from how fantastic this experience is. I have played it several times since then as a result, and each time I discover many new things. This is a game that changes anyone who plays it, and for that reason, I think everyone should. I've said this before, I love 3D platformers, and my favorite series is in fact the Super Mario games. At the top of them all stands Super Mario Sunshine, the entry I completed first. I love a good atmosphere in a game, and in my eyes, none did it better than Sunshine. On top of that, the unique mechanic with Flood, the sentient water pump, makes this game even more special than it could be, and I also find this game pretty challenging even now. People have a lot of problems with this game, and understandably so. The voice acting is horrible, the blue coin collecting is horribly monotonous, and Flood can really break the game in certain segments. But at the same time, I find the terrible voice acting to be part of its charm. The blue coin collecting not really all that bad for the player and unnecessary anyway, and for every time Flood makes the game easier, the secret levels in every world turn right around and kick you square in the butt. This one is just fun. Lots and lots of fun. I can't really describe why this would be higher on the list than a cinematic masterpiece or a one-of-a-kind experience like some of the aforementioned titles, other than it makes me happier than those games do. It's so much fun. I just love it, and I'll be damned if there's anything wrong with that. People who watch my Let's Play of this game are probably still racking their brains at the notion of this being one of my top 10 favorite games of all time, with all the anger and frustration it induced. But let me explain for a few minutes. For starters, I love the racing genre. I grew up on lots and lots of Mario Kart and Burnout. Heck, Mario Kart was one of the only games that both of my parents would actually sit down and play with me. Midnight Club was one of my first PS2 titles, and it's hard. Very, very hard. And that's part of the allure for me. I don't think it's possible not to be challenged by this game. It's super fast-paced, heart-pounding, and relentless. I'd even go as far to say it's the Dark Souls of racing games. Any mistake can be your last, but there's something appealing about that. Not to mention the fantastic car customization and the many different rides to choose from. And as far as the gameplay goes, I like the open city style far more than any track-based experience I've gotten in other games. It's faster, more surprising, more natural, and more difficult. And the race editor plays on this even more. Place a checkpoint and see who can get there the fastest. Pure speed and adrenaline. It's what racing games are all about. When I finally tapped into the PlayStation 3's vast network of games, I started with the Uncharted series. I had heard plenty about how good these were, and needed to experience it for myself. Buying the double pack, naturally I started with Drake's Fortune. The game was a lot of fun, albeit a tad frustrating and monotonous at times. A few weeks after it, I then began Uncharted 2, and holy crap! If ever there was a game that just doesn't stop, it's Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. It's full of action and constantly moves. You're always on your toes, wondering whether you'll have to jump, climb, or shoot next. And it's exciting too. Uncharted 3 tried for a good balance of this in the first game, but it just didn't hit that note. Among Thieves was consistently good. I've beaten it 6 more times since, and it somehow gets better with each playthrough. Not to mention the Asian setting of this one by and far trumps the other two. The environments, especially in the latter half of the game, are simply astounding. Uncharted is a series all gamers must try firsthand, and while I still would recommend playing them in order, certainly look forward to the second entry. It makes this series what it is. This was a tough one at first for me. Paper Mario is not a game that really defined anything for me. It didn't change me or my perception on games. It didn't totally blow my mind, but it was always there. From the moment it was released, I had it, I played it, and I loved it. Endlessly. I've said this before too, I do not care for RPGs, but that's because most RPGs involve monotony and tired old plots that I just don't like. Paper Mario does everything right that 99% of RPGs do wrong. There's little to no grinding involved, though you always have the option to do it. The story is exciting, quirky, surprisingly deep in certain areas, and not overly complicated. It doesn't tailor to a specific audience, it's fun, and that's it. And it also features fun platforming elements to boot. And it's simple in all the right ways, but why number 4 of all time? Well, every person who likes video games has that one that's incredibly important to them, and has been there since the beginning. A game that's always been one to pick up, play, and have fun with, no matter what you were experiencing in life, no matter how old you got, and no matter what mood you were in. Paper Mario is that game for me. There are no boundaries set here. It's a tried and true video game that gives me almost everything I could ever want when I pick up a controller. It's almost the perfect game for me. Almost. There's a certain breed of developers that have discovered how limitless a video game can truly be. Games can stimulate emotions that no other visual medium can. It can allow your mind to reach a place second only to where your own dreams can take you. One such developer that has cracked this code is That Game Company. In 2012, I saw a small advertisement-like video for the title Journey, but it didn't explicitly say what it was at the time. It showed me nothing more than a robed figure walking around in the sand. I'll admit it wasn't the most exciting or intriguing thing, but it caught my interest enough for me to purchase the game a year later, even though I hadn't seen anything more about it aside from the occasional written review. To make a long story short, I was floored. This game did something I wasn't expecting. It opened my mind, and I hate to sound so cliche, but in some ways it ruined me. I was so emotionally captivated that I had little to say when I was done. In fact, I played it again. and again, and I still play it again and again. Journey has a prominent feature that you won't find it in many other titles not made by that game company, and that's Zen, in the truest sense of the word. Zen translates to now, being caught up in the present, not the future or the past, and being completely aware and focused. I can honestly say I've never had a more Zen-filled experience than I did when I put on my headphones, dimmed the lights, and played Journey from start to finish. Each and every moment from beginning to last is visually and audibly captivating. You relish everything until it ends, and you are perfectly connected to your silent character's actions on an emotional scale. You feel everything that happens, and it's absolutely breathtaking. I think the one thing that makes this game number 3 and not number 1 or 2 is the game's length, though I wouldn't necessarily consider that a negative at the same time. If it was too long, you wouldn't be able to experience it in one sitting like it should be. This is not a game for taking breaks. This is one continuous journey, one that teaches the player to appreciate the beauty around them, to love everything that touches their ears, eyes, and mind. Fluid and perfect. Play it. For the love of all that is good, play it. Some people have a specific event, person, or object to hold on to that has had a little more than a positive effect on their life. Something that has actually changed them for the better. This can be just about anything, depending on the circumstance. And it's really those things that we cling to without reason. It's important to us. Let me explain mine now. Shadow of the Colossus. I suffer from, on occasion, extreme bouts of depression. A few years back, one of these occurrences hit me hard. So hard I might not have recovered. This chemical imbalance in the brain is far from natural. It sucks the life out of things that once held meaning, and in certain and incredibly unfortunate incidents, the effects are irreparable. Luckily, I decided to sit down and play a video game one night during this time period. This game was Shadow of the Colossus. While I knew the game was epic, for lack of a better term, with a grand score, a daunting premise, and a revolutionary style to it, I didn't expect it to have quite the impact it did. This game on its own taught me how beautiful the world is. The exploration in the Colossi themselves, although entirely fictional, were not without comparison to the real world. These things I wanted to be alive to experience for myself. This game saved my life, and that's not all. The game itself is something more entirely. While this game certainly has its flaws, one can come to recognize that these kinds of flaws don't necessarily have to retract from the game. The controls are a bit floaty, but I feel it adds to the game. It allows you to feel the weight of every action when you take a leap or a stab. The original version on the PS2 may not have had the best frame rate, but that didn't kill the experience by any means. Every Colossi is one of the greatest boss fights you'll ever face, each one a different and massive challenge of their own, not a single one forgettable, and all essential to meet the final goal. And what is the goal? Simple, yet heart-wrenching. The lack of dialogue for the meat of the game, if you will, allows you to experience it all at once, only woven together by the beginning and ending cutscenes, the latter of the two being one of the hardest to watch and most impactful of any video game to this day. The silence in this massive world and the fact that there's always something more to see is another aspect that adds to the allure. There's always something yet to be found, and you can never know what it is unless you try for it. All of it is left up to you. And with Shadow of the Colossus, the experience is 100% your own. However, one more trumps even that. How, you might ask? Well, see for yourself.
It's not me.